everybody, and welcome to the Seed podcast, Survive and Thrive, with me, Gemma Urton, and the wonderful April Banbury. We are going to be talking all about eating disorders, lived experience, body image, the world as we know it, the universe, whatever. But I'm just delighted to have April with us because me and April go way back.
We do.
We really do. So let me just read a little bit about April. I've had to Google it, and because I can't remember it all because you've done so much. So April, you were Miss Great Britain 2020, which was amazing, and you are now a Breathe ambassador, which is you can talk a bit more about it in the podcast, but it's an eating disorder support charity, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
brilliant. And not only was she Miss Great Britain, and I know this, she also works as a bride stylist and designer and was nominated as Britain's top designer finalist and showcased her collection twice at London Fashion Week, as well as all of the TV stuff that you've done. I can't keep up. There was one on the
the cabins in January.
Cabins, and there was another one, wasn't there?
Why not potentially meet a future husband? Didn't work, but
oh babe, story of my life. Are you still single?
Yeah, very much so.
I'm not alone. But April and I met, oh my God. You designed one of my first ever British Soap Award dresses.
It was, yeah, like years ago.
I think that has to be at least 8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And it was gorgeous. The red one, the red dress. I'll have to find some photos and post it.
And I did it completely blind because I hadn't even met you for a fitting. And it just so happened that it turned out amazingly, fit you like a glove. And then that's where our friendship began.
Yay. And then, well, this is where we get to. Then we met up and actually we realised that we had more in common than what we first realised.
Yeah.
So just before we get sort of stuck into the nitty gritty, you are here and very kindly come on because you have had lived experience of an eating disorder. But going back to the days pre-eating disorder, did you feel any different as a child? Do you know what I mean? Did you ever feel like you were treated differently or you stood out in a certain way? Was there anything sort of like in your childhood growing up that made you feel, because I know I did, different?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously a lot of people were bullied, a lot of children were bullied, but I was obviously bullied as well. And I then, my eating disorder came around when I was 8 years old. Off the back, we think what the doctors thought because of my mum leaving, and that's not a normal thing to go through. So that automatically made me feel different in itself, but I always knew that I was different, and I never sort of fitted in with the kids at school when I was younger, or even when I was a teen. I just sort of kept myself to myself in a way, like in my little shell or my little bubble.
Yeah. How old was you when your mum left?
I was 8 years old, and it was shortly after that the eating disorder developed, because it was, well, we think, and I'm pretty sure it was like a control mechanism, a way of this being the only thing that I could control in life, and that's when it all sort of spiraled downhill from there. And
was your dad around?
Yeah, my dad was around, but not so much because he was a professional cyclist, so he was obviously pursuing his cycling career. It would have been my mum's role to have sort of, maybe taken care of us a bit more whilst he was, bringing home the dollar. But obviously when the family broke up, I actually went and moved in with my nan. So I actually was raised by my nan and my dad.
Yeah.
For the rest of my life, pretty much.
It's funny, that you say about the bullying side. It's not funny, but that is exactly what happened with me. I remember back then, for me, I felt like I'd done something wrong, but in hindsight, I'd actually done nothing. Did you feel at the time like you knew why you were being bullied, or you knew, because I'm guessing it was jealousy? I mean,
well, I didn't even know why. I just thought it was an easy target, perhaps, And again, that's probably where the eating disorder came into play a bit, because I was trying to look at ways I could change in order to fit in, because I was getting, why am I getting bullied? Why am I different? Why am I not, one of the cool kids. Why don't I fit in? Why don't these people want to be my friend?
Yeah.
I was always looking for ways to sort of change myself to fit in. Obviously, looking back now, that sounds ridiculous, and no child should ever be able to be made to feel like that. But I think it's about educating children as they're younger, in ways to not only deal with bullying, but to not bully. I think that when we get it at a young age, because it's such a big thing and it's so awful. I actually was working with bullies out a lot throughout lockdown one, talking to people who were going through online trolling, because that obviously those numbers raised an awful lot during lockdown. And for me it's about educating people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, gosh, when I was younger, social media weren't even around, so I dread to think what it is like for kids nowadays, having just the pressure of being a kid, but then also the added impact of the online world. I mean, gosh, I mean, that's something I think like you and I definitely sort of agree on in terms of fighting for change around that. But it's Bullied Out, so you've been working with them as well as Breed.
Yeah. So Breed and Seed Lancashire, part of the same group, and then Bullies Out obviously separate. So I was doing a lot for Bullies Out initially before I became the ambassador to Seed Lancashire and Breed.
And how long, April, it's hard to sort of put a number on it sometimes, because I always say, like, recovery, like where does recovery end? Like there's no sort of like final
deadline. This is covered.
But when did you feel like you started to become April again, if that makes sense?
It was around my GCSEs. So when I left school and I went to college, everything changed. Sudden people were nice to me. And accepted me for me, and I didn't have to try and pretend to be anything I wasn't, and that helped a great deal, obviously, with the support from my doctors and my family as well. It got to the point where it was like, you need to change this or you're going to lose your life, and that really like sort of kicked things into gear to me as well. So it all sort of happened around the same time. It was a very slow progression. These things don't happen overnight. It's a mental illness at the end of the day. You need to learn how to work with that. But it was around that age that I finally, sort of landed myself in the recovery stage, and haven't looked back since.
That's amazing. And when you were going through it, when it started at 8, how did that roll out for you? Like, was it that your dad or your friend approached you about it, or was it that you actually said, I'm struggling? Like, how did that kind of happen, where it was acknowledged that you were struggling?
I think it was because obviously I was such a young age, at 8, my meals would be monitored anyway, because obviously they were made for me by my family. So when I wasn't eating dinner, I mean, I could get away with hiding my breakfast, I could get away with throwing my lunch away at school, but in the evenings when we sat down for dinner as a family, I couldn't hide that. I was trying to find ways, and I got caught a few times, and then they sort of tried to address it with me, and I was just in denial. I didn't even know what eating disorder was. I didn't even think they did. They just thought I had an issue with food. They thought I just had a complex about gaining weight, things like that, which even the case. It wasn't until I was just completely flat out refusing to eat at all, that they took me to the doctors, and then the doctors diagnosed me with anorexia, and that was when the help started.
And so you did get actually, because as we both know, and the reason we campaign so heavily for more eating disorder support and awareness is that lots and lots and lots of people struggling aren't fortunate enough to be able to get that help early on. So you're saying that you actually did, which is wonderful. And do you think that early intervention, when you say, like, sort of getting back to April again, started at around high school, 16, we know when early intervention isn't implemented, that's not always the case, So I guess that early intervention for you, even though you did lose years, it actually saved you a lot more.
100%. And like I was saying earlier with Bullies Out thing, you know, it's about educating people. It's not only about, you know, sort of educating people who are suffering, but also the families, having support there in place for the family, friends, to recognize the first signs and know what appropriate action to take to, you know, get them the best help they can as soon as possible, because it's like a ticking time bomb. The longer you leave it, the worse it's going to get. If you get it, you know, the early intervention is key, like you said.
And during those years, do you feel like you missed out? This might be a silly question, but do you feel like you missed out on a lot of things that the normal kids were? Yeah.
I mean, obviously I never hung out with the kids after school. I never did any of that. I was never allowed. I was ill. I couldn't, you know, I wasn't involved in like a lot of the PE lessons and things like that because I was too ill. So there was a lot of things I did miss out on as a child in that respect. 100%. And that was also one of the things that I think sort of again kick-started me into recovery, because, you know, it was like a light switch moment. I was like, you know, I want to do all these things with my life, and my family were like, you can't do that unless you're willing to recover, like you want to get better. You know, that was sort of my drive and my goal. And I've always said that to anyone that I've spoken to since I've been the ambassador for Breathe Therapies and Seed Lancashire, that, you know, focus on, you know, the things that you want to achieve in life, and really focus on them every morning, you know, before you go to bed, when you wake up, because things that are going to help you get through this, and it put like a mind over matter kind of mentality in you.
That's so important, April. So many come to us at our Seed, or just to myself as well, and I'm sure you get it, saying, how do I even start the road to recovery when I feel like I've got nothing to live for, when I feel forgotten, when I feel alone? And I say exactly the same thing. It's just finding that little bit of rational and little bit of spark and desire to think about what life is without an eating disorder, because if you live life with an eating disorder, you're never going to fulfill those goals and achievements. But like you say, it can be really small steps to start with.
Exactly. Be anything drastic, you know, it can be as much as wanting to recover, like that is the first step. When even that thought process changes, you know that you are already on your way to recovery.
And I always find it interesting, because I remember when we met and you'd spoken to me about how, you know, you'd been doing the beauty pageants, and that, you know, your dream was always to go for Miss Great Britain, and I always remember thinking, how does that marry up with what you've been through? Did you want to do the beauty pageants and have the goal of Miss Great Britain even when you were in the midst of the eating disorder?
I mean, I actually didn't even know that beauty pageants were a thing then.
Right.
Once I did know what they were, it made me, you know, inspired me even more and encouraged me even more to wanting to, you know, to become Miss Great Britain, because it's about body positivity, being comfortable and confident, no matter what size, shape, you know, where you come from, no matter how difficult your life may have been, your background or your culture. If that's a goal of yours, you can achieve it. You know, it's open to anyone. So I think by me entering, I mean, I entered Miss Great Britain twice, came second twice, and then I entered the Ms. Great Britain category and won it. And for me, that spoke volumes, because it's, you know, I've been through all this stuff, but I can still, you know, put myself forward to be that representative, you know, to be that role model for other young people who might be going through what I went through when I was younger, and they can look up and be like, you know what, she suffered from this, and you know what she's achieved now, so I too can do that, or I too can achieve my goals. It is possible.
That must feel like so empowering, you know, to actually be there on that stage. I don't know, I'm reading a book at the moment, oh my God, Untamed, Stop Pleasing, Start Living, and it is all about that, of just going, I'm here I am. And like, that must have felt such a proud and empowering moment to think, yes, and I feel good.
It was one of the best feelings in my life, and that's why I really wanted it, because I knew that winning that would enable my voice to be heard on another level. And I haven't stopped pushing, you know, with Bullies Out, and like I said, with Seed Lancashire, with Breathe Therapies, since I won, to continue supporting people, you know, like myself, like you know, and showing them, like I said before, the recovery is possible, just encouraging people to like never give up.
And what do you, so like now, do you sort of still feel like sometimes you just have to be in tune with it? Like, can you say absolutely not, the eating disorder's gone? Like, honestly, like, hand on heart, how do you manage that? Are you completely free of it? Because everyone's different, everyone is so different.
I mean, sometimes for me, I mean, I do like to think the majority of the time, yes, I am completely free of it, but it's a mental health disorder at the end of the day. There's sometimes a demon that will pop up, but I can manage that 100% now, and it's never become a thing since I was the age of 16, so I know it never will. You know, for me, it's, I make sure I'm eating breakfast, lunch and dinner. I make sure I'm never feeling super hungry when my stomach's empty, because that's the addictive feeling that I had when I was younger. So it's about managing it. And yeah, I do feel 100% recovered now, definitely.
That's amazing. That's so amazing. And I think that's a really nice place to stop our part one, because in part two, I'd love to look a little bit more at life now, life after the eating disorder and the recovery process and where you're at now. So I'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit.